Chris Minns, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Firstly, I just want to get your reaction to the reports this morning, a sort of dine and discover voucher schemes for rapid antigen tests. What do you make of this?
Well, look, in many cases, the rapid antigen tests should have been distributed to the people of New South Wales before Christmas. We've seen a huge number of Omicron cases right throughout the community. Perhaps between 500,000 and 1 million people have caught COVID in a single week, and yet it's very difficult to get your hand on a rapid antigen test. If you can get your hands on them, they cost between $10 and $20 for a family of 5. You're looking at $100 simply to test whether you've got COVID or not. So the New South Wales government is playing catch-up, but at the wrong time. And at the end of the day, these provisions and procedures should have been in place before the Omicron wave hit New South Wales. After all, the government was warned.
The Premier also wants RATs to play a role in getting kids back to school safely on day one of term one. Do you support school going ahead as planned, or would you like to see a delay?
No, we'd like school to go back on the 28th of January, but that's only 17 days away, and we don't want to see the public education system be plagued with the lack of preparation that we've seen in public health. The New South Wales government needs to urgently make sure that these rapid antigen tests are available. There's a critical shortage right throughout New South Wales. I was in the eastern suburbs last week where I saw people being turned away from PCR testing stations and told not to get tested. We're still in a situation in New South Wales where you can't upload your status, your COVID status on the Service New South Wales app, even though 3 other states have that provision already in place. Now, it's essential for New South Wales Health and the government to determine what the rate of Omicron is in our community so that resources can be deployed. But I'm very concerned right at the moment, public officials and the health system is flying blind in New South Wales.
Well, just on that, there could be an announcement as early as today or tomorrow about the recording of rapid antigen tests, the positive results on the Service New South Wales app, as you mentioned. Do you support making them mandatory, that you must record your positive result?
We do. We think it's essential that there's a mandate in New South Wales so that people must record their status of whether they've got COVID-19 or not when they have a rapid antigen test. It's important in terms of battling the disease that public health officials understand how many people have the disease in the community. Our big fear is that we're very late in the game. We've been told for years now that Service First app in New South Wales, Service New South Wales app in New South Wales is nation leading, and yet we've had to wait nearly a week before that application was made available to the people that live in this state. Now, the Chief Health Officer says it's very important for public health in New South Wales to understand how many people have the disease. That information hasn't been provided. So in many ways, we're in a very difficult situation in New South Wales because preparation didn't take place.
What sort of an impact could this mandate have on communities that don't speak English in New South Wales? Could there be some issues in trying to understand that process?
Well, what we have to understand is that the millions of people that live in this state have done the right thing over the last 2 years. There's been mass compliance with everything from staying at home orders to getting vaccinated to ensuring that you comply with the particular public health orders that have been brought down over the last 2 years. But for many communities, particularly those that don't speak English at home, they need to have the information explained to them. And if you look at the situation halfway through last year, there was a big trouble in terms of communicating public health orders to the big group of people, particularly those that live in Western Sydney, and it relied on the opposition, members of parliament and community organisations to communicate that effectively to those groups. Now, the former Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, used to have a daily press conference where information would be provided to the people of this state. That hasn't happened since Christmas and New Year's in New South Wales, and I think communication is essential because the people of this state have shown a willingness to comply with the rules.
Just finally, Chris Minns, the Premier is also potentially considering some form of compensation for businesses who have been impacted by the Omicron variant. What level of compensation would you support?
Well, we certainly think that the rental guarantee and the safeguards should be put in place to ensure that particularly those on commercial leases have some respite or relief over the Christmas and New Year period. Many of them were relying on that period to make up a lot of lost revenue over the preceding 12 months. And as ANZ reported, it's been one of the lowest, in fact, it has been the lowest levels of economic activity for the entire COVID pandemic, stretching back for 2 years. So Businesses are doing it very tough. We'd also like to see the summer stock guarantee be put in place for small and medium-sized enterprises, particularly if they've got overheads or they've got stock that may go bad, because we've seen people stay at home and economic activity flatline as a result of the Omicron outbreak over the Christmas and New Year period.
New South Wales Opposition Leader Chris Minns, we have to leave it there. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thanks so much.